Well, we have just about reached November for the Mid-American Conference as we welcome in Patrick Andrews from the Toledo Blade. Patrick, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Mark.
So with the fact that the Falcons are basically in action mode now, they are off this weekend. They next play the following Wednesday at home against Western. This is basically an off week for BG, a chance to perhaps get healthy, reassess some things, and as Scott Leffler looks back at the first half of the season, I think overall he's got to be pleased with where this Falcon team is right now.
The state of the union in Bowling Green is quite good after 8 games where there were some bumps along the road, but they got to 4-4. They got to a place that they wanted to be. We just saw them score a pretty dominant win against Central Michigan. They were dominating the Chippewas in a way they really haven't dominated many teams outside of Akron in recent years. They've had some trouble with Akron even, so it's just indicative of how far this program has come this year. I think this is one of the more solid turnarounds in all the Group of 5.
You said the A word, Akron. Winning at Akron is one thing. Winning at Central Michigan is a whole other thing. I think this has got a lot of people reassessing this Falcon program and saying, wait a second, BG, not only are they not bad this year, they might be good.
Yeah, with the caveat that Central Michigan was shorthanded, we saw Lou Nichols, their leading rusher, ruled out just before kickoff after Jim McElwain went back and forth during the week. He was very cagey about his status, but Central, they used 2 quarterbacks too. But Bowling Green, they pounced on Central Michigan the way they should pounce on a shorthanded team, and that's growth for Bowling Green, considering in recent years they really weren't doing that. And we just saw a complete performance on all sides of the ball. Offense, Matt McDonald's clicking, the running game's clicking, defensive line looks good, the secondary looks good. We really haven't heard a ton from the secondary this year, but they stepped up. They tackled well on Saturday. And on special teams, Sammy Sir, who has been a target of criticism from Scott Leffler at points, he had down 3 or 4 punts inside the 5-yard line. He was excellent. So it's a performance Bowling Green can look back on and say, with the exception of they committed a lot of penalties, they played pretty well all around.
Speaking of Matt McDonald, a really nice bounce-back victory for him. They won the previous week, but he didn't have his best game. He plays much better at Central Michigan. Big reason why they got that win.
Yeah, I think we talked about on this program how it was important for BG to get a win without him against Miami, but Central Michigan shows how different of a team they are with him. We saw that against Mississippi State. Obviously, Mississippi State is a much more talented team than Central Michigan, but this offense, when Matt McDonald is firing, it can do so many things. It can open up a running game where we saw Jason Patterson rush for 101 yards. He's BG's first 100-yard rusher of the season. And the wide receivers were getting into it after an uncharacteristically drop-filled Miami game. We saw Odu Hilaire had some big catches. He went over 100 yards in the first half alone. Tyrone Broden had 2 touchdowns, including an acrobatic catch at the very end that Matt McDonald said you only see that kind of thing in the MAC, that kind of acrobatic garbage time play. But it was just all-around good performance. Even though McDonald was sacked 6 times, he still was 18 for 21. That's an excellent sign for BG. They got to get that offensive line play cleaned up. But if he keeps playing like that, they'll be in good shape.
Other side of the ball, the defensive line for the Falcons, really an impressive outing against the Chips.
Yeah, probably their most fully formed outing of the season. We saw Carl Brooks was his usual dominant self. He had 3 sacks. Walter Hare had an interception where he rumbled 26 yards into Central Michigan territory. Demetrius Hardeman had a scoop and score he talked about after the game. He said, I really wanted to see Walter score that too. So I think, and Dontrez Brown had a big game. We can't forget about him coming off the bench. He played 29 snaps, and he was their 3rd highest graded player on Pro Football Focus metrics behind Brooks and Hare. So advanced and traditional metrics loved Bowling Green's defensive line performance. Central used 2 quarterbacks, but it didn't matter. Neither Daniel Richardson nor Jace Power could get anything going. This was probably the most fearsome pass rush that Bowling Green put out there this season.
One of the interesting things Scott Leffler said after that win, everybody in the MAC is equal, well, except maybe Toledo. They've got an edge on everybody with talent, but everybody else is equal. Is he already laying some groundwork for that battle of I-75 in a couple of weeks?
Yeah. You know how psychological warfare is in college football, and all teams in the MAC are equal, but some are more equal than others, you might say. But obviously, BG has UT within its sights. It's something that's very plausible. This is obviously BG beat Toledo a couple of years ago, but this is a team. I mean, if you want to beat Toledo, you got to be able to hamper the quarterback, and DeQuan Finn can be hampered, as Buffalo showed on tape. You got to be able to do multiple different things well on offense, and BG can do that. Obviously, UT has an obvious talent edge. Loeffler was correct; they're the most talented team in the conference, but they underachieved. They've underachieved a little bit at points this year, and they could be ripe for the taking for BG. But the focus in that building right now and SIBO Athletic Center is on Western Michigan. That's a task at hand for the Falcons right now.
Yeah, they do get Western before Toledo, but they have this week and a half off. What is going to be the Falcons' focus during this mini off week?
I think the biggest emphasis is going to be cleaning up penalties. I don't think Scott Loeffler was happy about that at all. We almost saw Bowling Green goes up 17-3 at the half, and we almost saw Central Michigan on the kickoff. Bowling Green commits 2 penalties. Suddenly, Central Michigan is on the Bowling Green 35. That could have been if Central Michigan would have tied that game, which they didn't because of a big defensive stop. But we would have looked at that and said those 2 penalties were the killers for BG. That's a fine line in football. You can't be committing those penalties, and they've been a problem for BG all year. Some games worse than others. Against Buffalo, they were pretty bad. In a couple of the non-conference games, they were pretty bad. Eastern Kentucky, there were some bad penalties, but it all comes down to the critical errors that Scott Loeffler keeps talking about. And I think if they go back to the drawing board, focus on discipline, focus on eliminating the silly penalties like offsides, and then I think the rest of the penalties will take care of themselves. And this is a veteran team. They've got leaders who can step up, and I think that's something, a storyline to watch the rest of the season. I think they're very capable of cutting down those penalties.
Bowling Green currently has 4 victories. You need 6 wins to be bowl eligible. Are there 2 more wins out there for the Falcons?
There are absolutely 2 more wins out there for the Falcons. Western Michigan they played better on Saturday, but they haven't been very good. This is a team. Bowling Green will have home field advantage. I mean, in as much as you can have home field advantage in Maction, Bowling Green will have home field advantage. They could easily beat Kent State. Kent State has struggled at times this year. Colin Schley, their quarterback, he was not in the lineup against Akron. So we'll see what happens there. And then if that could get them, they could easily be 6-4, and they finish with Toledo and OU, and anything can happen there. BG's in pretty fantastic shape, all things considered. They're in a much better place than they were. At 3 different points this year, it seemed like everything was going to go off the tracks, and BG has pulled themselves back from the precipice every time. And like I said on the last show, this is a really good coaching job by Scott Loeffler. There were a lot of questions coming into this year, and I think he's answered a lot of them.
Yeah, believe it or not, the Bowling Green Falcons are seriously thinking about going bowling. It'll be a very fun last month of the season. Looking forward to all of the action with the Falcons. I want to thank our guest from the Toledo Blade, Patrick Andrus. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Mark.